Easy is a descendant of slavery. His ancestors were the first humans in the world to be considered property under the rubric of pure capitalism. We were not only property, but also compelled to become the almost completely dehumanized technics of mass production. As time has gone on, the rest of America, women, transgendered people, other so-called races, and even working-class whites have begun to understand that this world wants to own their labor, hollow out their souls, and sell their produce in bulk to a world that does not know their names before, during, or after the material transaction that defines their brief, unsatisfying existence. That is part of the introduction to Walter Mosley's Devil in the Blue Dress, the 30th anniversary. That he has a date on there, 2020, so that is fairly new within the last 2 years. I just brought that up because, god damn it, man, doesn't that just tell it like it is right now, the work culture? It's just like, you're just a you're just a number, a cog in the machine, and even though the times have changed and the races who are getting fucked have been altered, I wouldn't say necessarily changed because everybody's still getting fucked the same, but it's just spread out now.
Yeah.
More people are getting screwed over. And the same thing, though, it's just fucking labor. It's just, hey, we're big corporations now. We're not slave owners anymore, but we might as well be.
Well, now it's not, I think it has switched from more of a race to a class.
It's a class system.
Yeah, now, now it doesn't matter. You can be white, black, Mexican, whatever, as long as you are below a certain pay grade, you're getting it.
Yeah, it's terrible out there. I don't want to dwell on that. I read that introduction to The Devil in the Blue Dress, and it was really good. It made me excited for reading the book. You already read it, but we'll talk. We're doing an episode, by the way, because I guess this episode will drop in February. So for February, book of the month is Devil in the Blue Dress by Walter Mosley. It's like a crime noir. I'm really excited to read that, and I was sitting here waiting for you to come over, and I was reading that introduction, and man, oh man, that just like, goddamn, he told it like it is, right off Jump Street. I'm just like, yep, I'm gonna like this book.
The only thing that threw me in that little, part there is whenever he mentions like the other so-called races.
Well, he elaborated either after that or before that. I'm assuming you didn't read the introduction.
I did.
You did? You remember?
I did. I don't remember him putting enough context to where I was just like, that was just like, it was a weird thing. I don't know.
Oh, where was that part? He actually had a really good line in there. I would like to read that if I could find it. It's only 2 pages here. I should be able to find it.
You know that, because I was looking at the different, like, all the other Easy Rollin books, and, like, there's, like, 15 of them, but, like, one of them came out, like, within, like, the last couple years.
It's like a newer one.
Yeah, so...
Well, I feel like this will be a series we might end up going down.
Oh, I already kind of figured that I'm probably gonna get the rest of these on my Kindle, probably.
Nice. That's probably a good move. So you don't have to fucking 50 paperbacks sitting around.
Yeah, right. I figure I can just grab some of them, buy a couple here, buy a couple there, because I saw a thing where you could buy all 15 and it was like $150.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, I guess isn't bad for like 15 books, but
I can't find that part. I'm not reading the whole thing again, but essentially what he was saying, reason why he had the other so-called races is because he was just pretty much saying at one point in there that we're just all the same.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't look at black people, brown people, yellow people, white people. He doesn't look at them as that. That's all he was saying. It wasn't like the other so-called resin.
Yeah, no, I just remember whenever
thought it was a little odd.
Yeah, I thought it was weird phrasing.
Yeah, I guess you would just have to know more about Walter Mosley, which we don't really. We started watching some of his masterclass, but I haven't really looked up. Like, he talked about his life on there, which seemed pretty, cool. Like, he was doing, like, hippie shit, and, like, he was all over the place, but I haven't really looked into, like, his personal philosophy or anything yet. But anyway, last night I finished The Two Towers.
Ooh.
And I'm going to tell you, Spencer, and I don't think you're going to like this.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to overjoy you to hear this, but so far, and I'm just going to count it all, because Lord of the Rings is technically one book.
Yeah.
That's how it was written, which I think is why it works so good, because a lot of series where I think me and Ashley discussed this, where the problem with a lot of fantasy series and just series in general is they're written like a series.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like a whole story thought, like how TV shows go. Sometimes like, oh, season 7's kind of sucking now. It's because they didn't think that far ahead necessarily. Whereas Lord of the Rings, like he wrote it as one book. So that's why it flows so well.
One big ass book.
Yeah. But I will count The Hobbit too, even though it's not technically a part of it, just because it's the same universe and lore and everything. and has overlapping characters. I think Lord of the Rings, because you know me, I'm not a favorite guy. I never have a favorite author. I have favorites, but never just one favorite author, one favorite book, one favorite series, anything like that. I think Lord of the Rings, if I had to pick, so far, I didn't read the last book yet. If I had to pick, like somebody was like, hey, what's your favorite all-time thing that you've read? So I think it would say that.
So like if you were on an island and you could only take like what,
it'd be Lord of the Rings,
couple books, it'd be Lord of the Rings?
It would, and I'll tell you why. Because my metric for what makes a good book or a book series or anything like that, one, quality of writing. That's obviously what I usually go for. That's why I like literary fiction more than just genre fiction, usually. Two, the storytelling, which that ties with number one, because if it's a shitty story, I don't care how well it's written, I'm probably not going to like it. So, yeah, quality of writing, good storytelling. What Tolkien has done, which I haven't come across because I don't read series too often, I would say Dune probably touched on this kind of... But yeah, obviously. Dune would be a good example. I only read the first one, was world building, being able to create history and lore in your stories. No, I don't think I'm sure there's people who've done better, but I mean, come on. How can you top Tolkien, really?
He kind of created a genre.
Yeah, it's literary merit. I would put it right up there with any literary fiction I've read.
Now, when was it originally published? Was it the late
30s, 40s?
Okay, I wasn't sure how early in like into the 19 like how
The Hobbit came out, I think, in 37.
Okay,
maybe somewhere around there. So after that, so
they're closing in on 100 years here soon.
Yeah, and it still stands up to this day as one. No, I would say, I can't say because I don't read a lot of fantasy. I can't say it's the best fantasy. But here's what what I thought was strange about The Lord of the Rings, because even in the classic lit group we're in, and on Goodreads, when I read reviews and stuff, a lot of people said that they were bored by it. That's one reason I never read The Lord of the Rings before, because I thought it'd be like H.P. Lovecraft, where it's like, oh, the ideas are actually cooler than the source material. When you go back and read the Cthulhu mythos, you're like, well, this is really cool, but not the actual writing, not the storytelling. Wrong. I don't understand why people think Lord of the Rings is boring. I get some of the council talk they have, like the Council of Elrond, and some of those things can be kind of boring because it's just exposition. But that's not that much, really.
How many people do you think that say that watch the movies or like influenced
or watched it first?
Yeah, like are influenced by the movies.
That's a possibility, and I will say, even though I watched the movies a long time, like when we were in school, that's how long it's been. I didn't remember anything, which was good. Like, I remember the characters, and that was about it. I knew they had to throw the ring in a fucking fire. Like, I didn't remember all the stuff.
Spoilers, Caleb. Fuck. God damn.
I didn't remember anything about, like, all the kings and stuff. And there's so many adventures individual adventures they're on that I didn't remember any of that. I don't even know if some of that was in the movie. I don't remember. I bought The Hobbit. After I read The Hobbit, I bought the DVD. It's fucking 3 movies, too. That does not need to be 3 movies, by the way.
I was going to say, if I know Peter Jackson, I'm pretty sure they were in the movie.
It's like, geez. But I'm going to watch those, and then I'm going to go, after I finish reading Lord of the Rings, what I got, Return of the King left. After that, I'm going to watch the movies. I have to get the extended version. And then I'll be able to judge better, because those were, like, I didn't give a shit about those movies. Like, they were okay.
Yeah, no, I never.
It was kind of like... It was like watching Harry Potter to me. I was like, because we watched some of those in school too, and I was like, all right, wizards and shit. I guess that's okay. I just didn't care. Like, I had no interest in like if I watched the first Lord of the Rings and never watched the rest of them, I wouldn't even known really.
You know what I think?
You might not have watched them.
I'm gonna say I think that's me. I think I watched like the first one, then they played at school, and I never watched any of the other ones.
But the books are so well done, and they're just so entertaining. And one thing too, the humor in them. Like, it's very rare I read a book where I'm actually laughing at times. I could probably count, on my fingers how many times I've read a book that actually made me laugh out loud multiple times, especially outside of, like, comics, too. So, like, that's what stuck out. I was like, there's a lot of funny stuff in there, too. And honestly, I think it's kind of making me a better writer, because now I'm thinking of, like, my metaphors and stuff in different ways that I didn't have before, because I never had that fantasy aspect to my writing. Whereas the story I'm writing has a lot of fantasy elements coming up. So I kind of need that.
Yeah.
So that's good. I can't say it's made me interested to read modern fiction, though, just because, like, from what I've read, I didn't give a shit. And I do get the whole, like, all the names and the towns and the weird spelling. Yeah, that still is, like, kind of daunting to get into. That's like, That's like when you get into anything, whether it's tabletop games, RPGs, like getting into that world, you have to, there's a exposure period you need. Like even reading mangas, reading them backwards and stuff. It could turn you off if you just like, I don't really want to get it. And there's 9,000 volumes of this one series. I don't want to get it. But once you do and you get your feet wet, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's just like, the initial dip in the pool. It's too cold. But once you get your body acclimated, you're all right. So once your mind's acclimated to fantasy and stuff like that, I think it's okay. So I will explore more fantasy in the future.
Now, how much is like, because, like, I always see other, like, stories that take place in Lord of the Rings and, like in that, within that world, is that written by him?
Yeah, everything's written by him. Christopher Tolkien edited some of the Silmarillion. I think he edited that and put it together, but Tolkien wrote it. I believe he wrote everything. So I am going to read the Silmarillion after Return of the King. And that's the one that's apparently really challenging. But the people who gave negative reviews of The Lord of the Rings, the two things, it was boring and it was challenging to read. It was too hard to read. I haven't had any problem reading. I thought it was easy. Like I mean, we come from a slightly different generation compared to like the Zoomers and stuff now, but I wouldn't think this was not anything a teenager couldn't read. Like I don't understand. I mean, you get some of the backwards type of Yoda talk, like the medieval talk. That could throw you off for a minute, but once you get acclimated to it, it's not hard. So I don't know why people think it's challenging. I think the biggest problem for people would just be their own attention span. Is just like you're reading something that's kind of dense, because I got those little Hobbit editions,
Yeah.
The little pocket editions I've been reading. So the text is really small. So it looks like you have big blocks of text that might not be as bad in like a bigger format. But I could see people looking at that and going, oh, that's too much for me. And the material cover is very dense. So when they talk about the lore of something, they really go into it. But I like that stuff. I like world building and things like that. So I found it entertaining. I think it's, like I said, so far, unless Return of the King really shits the bed, which from my understanding, that's probably the best one. I think it's good. So far, I rated the first two, all three books so far, The Hobbit, The Fellowship, and The Two Towers. 5 out of 5 stars for me.
Now, when are you gonna start the?
After I read this Devil in the Blue Dress. My plan here is I'm gonna read the Devil in the Blue Dress in a couple days.
Yeah, it won't take you long.
Yeah, you said you flew through it, so it shouldn't take long. And then I'm going to. I told Ashley we were gonna start that Oblivion inebriated reading challenge thing mid-February, but maybe it's gonna be a little sooner because I don't think it's gonna take me very long to read this book. And so I'm going to do Return of the King, and then since that's short stories, I'll just read a short story for the podcast and do it that way. And I'm still reading this Hemingway. I actually got, 150 pages into this Hemingway book. And like I said, I've just been reading one article a night when I started like a month or two ago. So that's not bad.
No.
Most of them are only 3 pages long. So
make sure you don't forget to carve out some time for...
I read that before you came over.
For Bog Bodies?
Yeah, I read that in about, in 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Maybe a little longer. I took a bath because my back's been hurting, so I read some in there, and then I came down here and read the rest. And you know what, Spencer? I was going to save it for book club, but since the listeners aren't in our book club, didn't care for it.
No?
I'll tell you why off air. Anyway, we have an interesting show. I think you'll like this one because somebody you know personally is on this list we're going to read. You don't actually know Stephen King, do you?
I know.
I just tell people that because you're a big fan.
Yeah, they don't. He doesn't ever write back with any of the.
Well, you keep putting too much hair and other stuff in the letters.
Well, that only works.
Anyway, stick around, and we have a great show for you. This is the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. Dun, 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 dun. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Yokohama Yak Yodeler Church.
Yeah.
Now, yodeling, wow, it is a verb. Yak yodeler is not a thing. Like, you can't yodel a yak. That doesn't make sense. And yaks, as far as I know, are not anywhere near Japan, so Yokohama Yak Yodeler makes no sense.
None.
But there's very few Y words I could think of off the top of my head that would have worked.
I immediately just thought of the yakety yak, don't talk back, but done in a yodeling theme somehow.
I'll go for that.
I don't know how that would work or sound, but I'm interested.
Yeah, that'd be all right. Today's episode, I don't know I'm going to title this one. This would be a DBS episode. I'm kind of trying to push off that 100 episode because that's going to, like, we haven't come up with an idea. We can't just be like, 100 episodes, clappity clap. Like, we got to do something, I would think. I don't know.
I thought the theme song was changing.
Well, we're changing the theme song, but, like, what's the actual episode going to be about? Reflection? Our failures? Our failures? Oh, our failures.
I mean, that's what we get the most to talk about.
I know. Ranking the 10 best American authors from the 20th century. And this is from edamurray.com. So I don't know who Ed A. Murray is, but this is his picks. It's from 2020, a couple years ago. I keep thinking 2020 is like now.
Or
it's very recent. It's 2 years ago.
Well, it's either it's like it's now or it's a very long time ago.
Well, when I read that intro to the Devil Wears the Blue, Devil in the Blue Dress, it said 30 years ago, and I looked at the date because it was published in 1990, and I almost threw up because that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm born before that.
Yeah, right.
What the fuck? That sucks. I'm not going to read this guy's introduction. I just wanted to go into his list because it's a top 10 list, and I know how you feel about the top 10.
At least these ones are numbered.
I'm only doing this list because it was unique in some of the choices, and I disagreed with a lot of the choices. Not necessarily, well, it's hard to say like order because that's a personal thing, but just I would like to say just the top 10. There's people I feel that shouldn't be in the top 10, and then some people who I would want in the top 10. And this is going to be difficult probably for both of us because I don't think either of us have read a lot of these people's work, most likely. And you don't have this in front of you, and I don't feel like bringing it up on the computer, so I'm just going to read them. So 10 is Jd Salinger. I already have beef. I'm going to go with my beefs after the list, but I already got beef with that. And you know why.
I know why.
While Lamoste began, his name's Lamoste? Oh, man, I must need glasses. I put I and almost together.
Wow.
And it's not even small font. It's been a long day. The cold is fucking with me. My whole body's falling apart. While I almost began this list with T.S. Eliot, that would have been a good choice, I decided to go with Jd Salinger simply because he spent all of this writing years in America. Though born in America, Eliot spent all of his... Oh, I get it. Fucking Eliot wrote in England.
He spent all of his time in America writing.
He worded that weird. Along with Harper Lee, Salinger could be considered a one-hit wonder in the literary world. Salinger has had some other work out, but like I don't know how many novels he's had. Ashley was more of a fan of his like real life, I guess, because I think he's like a war hero and stuff. I didn't really.
What's his one-hit wonder?
Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
You haven't even read it yet.
Yeah.
It's like you don't. We did. If you folks are interested, we covered Catcher in the Rye on Inebriated. It was supposed to be a series, the Inebriated reading. I think we did one, maybe 2 episodes, and we just finished it. We're like, we can't talk about this shit phony book anymore. Some people like it. Some people just fucking hate it. I'm indifferent. I thought it was okay. I didn't like the character, so I didn't. I read this in my 30s as well, so obviously I didn't relate to the problems of a petulant, whiny, fucking very privileged rich kid who, you know what? I'm not going into it. So 10 is Jd Salinger. Number 9, Harper Lee. I can see why, because To Kill a Mockingbird, in my opinion, because I read that a couple years ago, is one of the most important books in American literature, if not just literature in general. I really enjoyed the book, but that was her only book. The other one she had was like right before she died, and it's supposed to be a sequel, but it's just like somebody stole it, or I think it was, I don't know. It was like she shit it out, and it was terrible and racist, and nobody liked it, but I wouldn't count that. It's like you're on your deathbed, and somebody makes you put out a fucking book, like something that was written 50 years, 100 years ago, whatever. Number 8, here's where it gets interesting. Stephen King.
Yeah.
We don't need to elaborate on Mr. King's work, but again, I'm gonna hold off on my opinions till the end.
I was just happy he was on the list.
Mm-hmm. Some people,
honestly, I thought he was gonna be like 10.
In the classic lit group, this is where this article was initially posted, at least where I saw it. A lot of people had very strong beef with that decision, but a lot of people in general in that group shun Stephen King, while others, like us, say, hey, he's a modern American writer, and he's damn good in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I could get why people would say, not a classic lit, he wouldn't fit in that. Well, yeah, he's not a classic lit writer. He's fucking, came out in the 70s. 7, Maya Angelou. So it was an odd choice because she might have had a novel. Let's see. Because she's a poet. She had memoirs. She did have books and essays and stuff, but she's mainly known as a poet. She didn't have a best-selling, great American novel. She was a poet, which I really like her work, like Why the Caged Bird Sings and stuff like that. So I could see her on the list if we're just doing that in general. because this was this novelist?
I think he just said writer.
Yeah, so American author, so that works. I'll go with that. Number 6, Theodore Seuss, a.k.a. Ted Geisel. Well, I fucked that all up. Theodore Seuss, Ted Geisel. That's fucking Dr. Seuss. I don't know why they put his name like that. He's Dr. Seuss. If you're going to add kids literature, obviously, come on, everybody knows Dr. Seuss.
Yep.
Also, by the way, for folks who don't know, he actually pronounced it Seuss. I'm not joking.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that someplace else before. It just sounds
and
so
come
weird.
on, brah. It's Seuss. You're a Seuss. Number 5 on the list, Ernest Hemingway. It's hard not to have him on any kind of American top author list because, goddamn it, he's Ernest Hemingway. You know, a lot of Americans, when you say, well, maybe not now because people were stupid, but in the olden days, like, what are you, a regular Hemingway? Like how they would say Shakespeare. You know, as the American version, you're a regular Hemingway.
Yeah, he has that clout and reputation.
Mm-hmm. Number 4, which I do not disagree with this choice at all. I just thought it was a unique choice for the top 5 was Toni Morrison. I have not read her work yet, but like Beloved is considered one of, if not the best American novel of all time. So I would definitely put her there. It's hard, like I said, it's hard for us to put people in the top 10 when we haven't read their work. I mean, if you really think of our reading of American authors, how many would be able to fit a top 10?
Right.
I don't know how well read I am, but Toni Morrison, I can see that. Number 3, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Again, like Hemingway, it's hard not to include him on the list. I would have Hemingway over him because, while he did write The Great Gatsby, which is probably considered way better than any of Hemingway's work. I won't say way better, but more esteemed, you know?
Well, again, say the writing styles are so different, aren't they?
But I'm just saying, like, as far as what connected with audience, like, you know, what was a shooting star at one time was the Great Gatsby versus Hemingway's work was just consistently good, but you know, F. Scott Fitzgerald kind of fizzled out there.
I'd say how much more did he write?
He has other books. He had books before the Great Gatsby was a big failure at first. It wasn't until they sent it overseas for the troops to read, just as like a pick me up for some reason, that it became popular. Like Catcher in the Rye, I don't think was really popular until they just started putting it in schools and shit. But he had like This Side of Paradise, I think, came out before. One of those was like a big hit before, and then they were like disappointed that The Great Gatsby sucked, quote unquote, at the time. But then it got real popular. And he was like a jazz age king, but as soon as the 30s came, no more jazz age. What the fuck did he write after that? He's trying to be like he was trying to write screenplays for Hollywood, and that didn't work out. And he's a drunk and went to shit. Number 2, William Faulkner. I have not read his work yet, but it's very, very dense and difficult from my understanding, just from the excerpts I've read. Like The Sound of the Fury's on my list. Absalom's on my list. As I Lie Dying is on my list. But a lot of it's like stream of consciousness stuff, like just flowing. You don't know who's talking, what's going on, kind of plotless, aimless.
Like experimenter kind of
stuff.
stuff.
Like a lot of postmodernist stuff. Like, that's why I haven't read any Joyce really outside of short stories. Because we, like, just from reading his fart letters, we're like, damn, this guy could write. Yeah. But at the same time, do you want to read a story you don't understand? You know, that's like, I have to be in a certain mood for that. Number 1, John Steinbeck. And that's the one I do agree with.
Yeah.
You know, my buddy Johnny.
Yeah.
I like me some John Steinbeck. You've only read a couple of his works.
But
right?
I would agree. I can agree with that.
I read most of Steinbeck's work, at least his fiction, and the only thing I really didn't care for was that King Arthur stuff, which technically was a first draft that he didn't finish.
Yeah.
So
he died before he could finish it.
Much like Harper Lee's Along Came a Watchman or whatever that fucking sequel is. It was kind of almost released without his permission, right? Because he was dead. Like he didn't finish it. And I would imagine if I was a writer, I wouldn't want people to publish my unfinished work. So that's weird. So going back, the people I'm going to add to this list, I can't really put them in any particular order because I haven't really thought that far. And also, I'm kind of being an asshole doing this because some of them I haven't even read, my other choices. So Jd Salinger, while I understand that he was, very big with Catcher in the Rye, that was like it. I feel like if you're a one-hit wonder, you can't be on the list. That's just my opinion. So I would replace him.
Well, especially whenever especially when that one-hit wonder is still very like it's not like everybody's like yes,
it's not
that is good. Like
it's
what
not beloved by everyone.
Yeah, it could be like I don't know what example you'd use from that, but I could see if there was somebody who only wrote one novel, but it was like
the
touted
novel,
as like
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Perfect example. Yeah.
All right. And when I first read this, because I'm a fucking buffoon, I didn't read the 20th century part. I just thought American authors, and I saw no Poe, no Mark Twain. I was like, whoa! But then I read, I fixed myself. So anyway, so
Check
JD
yourself before you wrecked yourself.
Salinger, he's getting bumped. I'm taking him off.
Yeah.
And I'm replacing him. And again, I can't put these people in order necessarily because I haven't read enough of their work. And I only read short stories, so I can't even say, but I'm going by consistency of quality. So someone who's very known for consistent work, even though I haven't personally read it, Ray Bradbury. How do you not have Ray Bradbury in the top 10, right? I feel like he definitely beats a one-hit wonder. Next up, we have Harper Lee. Like I said, one of the greatest works of all time, but I would not have Harper Lee in the top 10 because there's also some debate whether she actually wrote it or if it was her editor that fucking made the book, what it is. So I wouldn't say Harper Lee. I would throw in Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah.
And even though I only read Slaughterhouse-Five and some of his short stories, I feel like he has to qualify because his other books people know and he's very well established.
I wasn't sure what his because he would fall in the 20. Yeah, because he was
20th century. He's in the 50s or whatever. Number 8, Stephen King. Keep the King.
Yeah.
Now our order would be different. I think 8's fine.
Yeah, that's like I said. I'm just I wouldn't be surprised. Like I was. Definitely, whenever I first saw this list and I clicked on the thing, when I didn't see him at like 10, I was just like, God damn, these assholes.
He thought he'd be 10, yeah.
Yeah, but they gave him 8, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm just happy he's on the list.
For a genre writer to be on the list, I feel is pretty impressive. And for his work, you can't deny it. Like, if you write so many books and they're at least even if they were just B quality, like if you consider Stephen King's work just B grade, but he has 60 plus fucking books that are like that, I would say that would qualify you on the list.
And as we brought up, many times before, he has done many stories like Shawshank and Green Mile. Well, it's
not all supernatural horror,
yeah.
There's different things.
Even whenever there is still some supernatural thing, it's not just like a monster thing.
Yeah.
It's to highlight or enhance things.
Number 7, Maya Angelou. I would keep her, though it's hard for me to have a poet be on a list with other, like, just mostly novelists. That's a little tough. Same with number 6, Dr. Seuss. I mean, I get it. Like, to say Maya Angelou isn't one of the greatest American authors, that would be a foolish thing to say. I don't know if I would have her necessarily at 7, again, just because I'm kind of looking at this from novelists, or short stories even, but I'm fine with her on the list. I think that's perfectly acceptable. It's hard for me because
especially because you want to have that one poet.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean. You want to represent that group of.
I guess my only real issue is like I'm a fan of Richard Wright and Ralph Ellison, but they only are really known for one book each, like kind of one hit wonders. So you can't really bump Maya Angelou off for that. It's just like Invisible Man and Native Son were such incredible novels, but. If we're keeping with consistency here, like we got rid of Harper Lee because of that, can't count those guys. So number 6, Dr. Seuss, I would probably put him 10 if I was going to put him in the top, because obviously he's had an impact.
But is it hard? It's like whenever you've only done like children's novels or story, like, you know what I mean? It's kind of that hard to. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like,
and then
I feel like that almost needs to be another category almost. But then that's probably not enough.
Honestly,
to fill it out.
I probably wouldn't put Dr. Seuss top 10 because then if you're doing that with the children's books, it's like, well, why can't we have like a comics guy?
Yeah.
Why can't we have like a Frank Miller or somebody on the list? Like, why is it just strictly because that's like very similar to Dr. Seuss books? They're mostly cartoons, right?
Yeah.
With like goofy, rhyming. They weren't like novels. They weren't even like they weren't like Harry Potter books. They were, like Dr. Seuss books are just like kind of cartoony fun things. So I would say like there's plenty of comic writers who could have probably filled the spot too. So yeah, actually I'll bump at Dr. Seuss. Who would we replace Dr. Seuss with? Who else on the list is he? See, I'm not bumping anyone else off of this list. So Dr. Seuss would be the only other person bumped. See, I can't say Thomas Wolfe because I haven't read his work yet, but he probably considered one of the best just writers period of all time. It's just his actual work, like his novels and stuff. I don't know how many because he died young too. I don't think he wrote enough novels that became like, they weren't like popular enough. Like, he was popular in his day, but I mean, can you name a Thomas Wolfe novel?
No.
And I mean,
I just know you have that big thick thing.
Yeah. I mean, you could have Truman Capote, you could have the other author, Tom Wolfe.
Now, my question is, how long do you think we have to wait until you could maybe like throw like a Neil Gaiman or something like that.
It's not American.
Oh, that's true.
This is America.
Yeah,
that's what I was
true.
saying. Because then I could have said, Dr. Seuss, fuck off, Alan Moore, you're in.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, the American is this. That's what makes
It's so weird
tricky.
too, and it's so weird now too because it's like it's hard to, because like he's probably lived in America for like years, and it's that's.
And what's also weird is you don't hear of the great Britain novel, like you don't hear the great Canadian novel, or you never see list of awesome Canadian authors like the greatest. It's always American because we're stuck up.
Who's the best Canuck writer?
Yeah, like Russia has like fucking arguably better writers than we had, like Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and stuff. But do you really see lists like that? I mean, they're always on the writers all-time writers list, but you never see like top Russian writers. I mean, I'm sure those lists are out there. It's just like they're not prominent like this. Again, who would we? Personally, a lot of people are definitely going to disagree with this. I'm going Robert E. Howard.
Yeah.
Look, I know he's pulpy.
See, I thought maybe you would put Tolkien in there.
He's British.
Oh yeah.
Again, the American part. You know what? See, I haven't read enough of his work, so I can't say Chandler. Because Raymond Chandler probably, he could probably be a fit for this too. Because I feel like the pulp writer should be representative. I wouldn't go H.P. Lovecraft just because I didn't enjoy his work enough. Like, Robert E. Howard's my guy.
Yeah.
I've really liked most of his work. I would put Robert E. Howard in there just to represent the fantasy and pulp genre. So fuck you guys if you don't like it. I wouldn't put him number, what is that, 6?
Yeah.
I'd put him 9 or 10.
Yeah.
5, Ernest Hemingway. 4, Toni Morrison. 3, F. Scott Fitzgerald. 2, Faulkner and Steinbeck. While Faulkner is probably considered way better of a writer than probably anybody on this list, just for the subject matter, and again, not having read him, I would put him at the 5 spot. Just because, as going with Stephen King, you need accessibility too. Like the readers have to be able to read your work, and like you can't just be literary snobs that like your work. That's where my opinion lies. So I would say Faulkner 5, and once I read his work, that might change. I'll give Hemingway the 4 spot, Toni Morrison the 3rd spot. Actually, I will give Fitzgerald the 4th spot, Hemingway the 3rd spot, Toni Morrison the 2nd spot. And my boy John Steinbeck still goes number 1 because I don't think anybody has written such Americana. Like all his work is so American. Granted, it's usually California stuff, but
and he's a great example of what you were saying, like with like the accessibility of like
anyone can read a Steinbeck book.
Yeah, and like just from the little bit that I've read, what and how he writes, is just so easy, and it flows, and it's not like a challenger. It's not like you're reading like doing a book report or something that you have to do,
Can I have a controversial pick?
Sure, why not?
If we had to bump someone off of that list, or because I picked Robert E. Howard. Okay, say Howard doesn't cut the snuff for most people, because most people don't know Robert E. Howard. That's fine. True. So if we have an actual recognizable name to take, just be in the top 10 somewhere. While I personally wouldn't pick this individual, I kind of think you have to go Cormac McCarthy, because
I was actually waiting. I was surprised he wasn't on the list. Yeah, I was waiting for him to be on the list because I was waiting so we could do the slow pause and just put the music in the back every time that he gets brought up in the podcast.
Cormac McCarthy, Norman Mailer, and John Updike, I think, could all have a claim to the top 10 just because like their work's been made into movies and everything, but they're still kind of literary guys. So you could probably fucking swap out any of those guys. I've only read The Road and What We Did of Blood Meridian.
What we shall not speak of.
And then Norman Mailer, I only read The Fight, so I haven't read his work. And then John Updike, I haven't gotten to his, but I think Ashley said he read that Rabbit series or whatever, Run Rabbit. Apparently it was good. I don't know. On my list. Moving on, because this kind of segues. This isn't going to be the title of the episode, but I was thinking about the Great American Novel, and I saw a post in here, and this guy did it the right way. He did just alphabetical order of what he thinks would fit the bill as the Great American Novel. This is a pretty big list, so I'm just going to kind of highlight some of these. I'm not going to go through. So, he started off, he had Absalom by William Faulkner, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Beloved by Toni Morrison, Blood Meridian. Then he had The Confidence Man by Herman Melville, and he picked that because he didn't think Moby Dick fit the bill for America because it was more about whaling, I guess. Like he didn't fit because when you think about the Great American Novel, it's supposed to be highlighting America in a certain way and like a feel of America. And there's a bunch of like Grapes of Wrath and different things like that on here. So I was thinking about this, and what my top picks would have to be.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
That was on my list. I actually have a good reason for that. Hold on, I'm gonna read what my comment was on here. Why doesn't it come up with just my name? Like, why wouldn't I be on top? Fucking Facebook's a joke. Facebook's a fucking joke. Zuckerberg is a robot. He's not a robot. He's a robot. He's a fucking. That's a Jewish robot. A robot. Zuckerberg might actually be a Jewish name. That's probably like anti-Semitic then, if I'm making fun of him. Anyway, I forget what I was saying, but I'm just gonna go off of that list. So what my picks were in no particular order, because I think if you vote for the great American novel, it's just an era thing. You can't just say, oh, this is the greatest American novel of all time.
Yeah.
Because it has to go when the era it was written. There's nothing that's going to fit, a book from the 1800s is going to fit now. While I haven't read Huckleberry Finn yet, I did read Tom Sawyer, so I kind of feel like where Huckleberry Finn's going to go. And since people regard that so much better, I'd say obviously that one would be considered the great American novel, if not the first great American novel. I would say Grapes of Wrath, probably from Steinbeck. I think that fits more of the era than, because, Mice of Men is not really, that's just about two guys. That's too, small. Yeah. And then East of Eden is too big and grand. I think that just feels too much. So I would say, of course, The Winter of Our Discontent could also fit for a Steinbeck book, because that was small town, white suburban America. So that was the era. But I would go, I think, of all, Grapes of Wrath. I would say, which this guy did not list for some reason, To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't see how it gets much more Americana than the fucking racist South,
Especially when you put in the caveat of the time that it's written.
Go with the era. So that definitely has a claim. I would go with, here's my problem. Because with Invisible Man and Native Son, I like Native Son more than Invisible Man. But Invisible Man is regarded higher and probably does tell the story of black people in the 20s, 30s, and 40s better than Native Son. Because Native Son's really gritty and there's murder and so I would say Invisible Man probably would take the spot of the great American novel. I haven't read Beloved by Toni Morrison, but from my understanding and the synopsis I read of it, that would fit the bill. Like you said, Fear and Loathing. That's the whole book's about the end of the 60s going into the 70s. That fits. I'd probably throw in, I only read Dharma Bums from Jack Kerouac. I did not read On the Road, but I would imagine, because On the Road's what made him real famous. So I would imagine On the Road would be, because that's the beatnik era, and those fucking group of traveling weirdos. So I'd throw that in. I would even say the American Psycho. It seems like an oddball pick. I think American Psycho would have a claim to the great American novel, because what really expresses the fucking chaotic Wall Street 80s in that book. Mm-hmm. What else would possibly fit that bill? What would you
I don't know, because I'm just now recently in the past few years starting to branch out into more things. So I'm not even I don't even know what you consider.
What would represent? Because a lot of people said Blood Meridian because of the area and I just didn't like it, so I can't say Blood Meridian, but I could get why people would pick that, because it's the Western anti-Western, but it's the Wild West would be something that would fit the bill. Fuck, I'm trying to think of something that we both read that would count, but most of the classic lit stuff we read that outside Steinbeck was foreign stuff. I think. I don't think there's any Stephen King that would count that I know.
I'm not. I don't.
The closest might actually be Revival.
Maybe, because it kind of
the broad spectrum of America, and there's a lot. Well, I haven't read enough of his work. Does he have some work that's very American? Just any area, any.
I don't know. It's hard to because he has things that because we say the Green Mile that takes place during slavery, and
that wasn't a full novel, was it?
It was a collection of, it was a 6-part, so all together it makes a full novel. Mm-hmm. But I don't.
Well, didn't he write? What was that? Was it 1963 or something? Did he write something about the Kennedy assassination?
Yeah, it was a time travel story where a guy goes back to try to stop the assassination and just kind of deals with all that kind of stuff.
I would imagine none of those are regarded high enough to make the cut. I'm gonna see real quick before we end this what comes up if I just looked at, because I was looking, there was like some weird things that came up. I'm definitely gonna get some shit for this if there's any classic lit people reading. Because there's very few modern books I've even liked, like in the last 10, 15 years, let alone one I would consider the great American novel. I would say Norm Macdonald's based on a true story kind of fits, though. Because if you're going to add Fear and Loathing...
Yeah, it definitely falls within that wheelhouse.
Granted, it's not necessarily about the time periods and stuff he was in, so I get it doesn't have that super American aspect to it, and he's Canadian, so I guess you can't count him. But I just feel like his experience.
What kind of Canadian, right? One of the best American novels.
Because there's imaginary borders. So other people have picked The Scarlet Letter. I actually never read that. The Joy Luck Club. Gone with the Wind I can see. It was like a Civil War era. Yeah.
I mean, with not ever reading it or watching the movie, but yeah, I could see that.
The Last of the Mohicans. That's another one I would consider, definitely. I never heard of Ragtime. The Sound and the Fury, I never read that. But again, that's on my list, and I can see why that would be picked. The Outsiders was actually a big one. We read that in school.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah,
because of the time period.
Yeah,
that was like Greasers and stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, I could see that, yeah.
Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, I agree. Kill a Mockingbird. How did I forget The Great Gatsby? Obviously,
we were just talking about it, too.
Yeah, like that was the whole fucking era. That's like one of the top great American novels. Middlesex by Jeffrey. I never read that. I heard that's like is that one that's difficult? I don't remember. And The Grapes of Wrath. So, yeah, that's good. I just thought that was like an interesting topic, but I was trying to think like outside of the box what would be considered. But other than Fear and Loathing, I'm not quite sure. I'm not familiar enough with Vonnegut's work to know if he wrote something that would be very American. He did a lot of sci-fi stuff. And
that's like a lot of stuff that I read don't focus like just on
like the American life of the time.
Yeah,
Like Steinbeck was great for that. He was always like the slice of America, Which is interesting because if you ever said who wrote the great Japanese novel, I think Haruki Murakami would pop up numerous times. Because his stories always have that Steinbeck feel of like, this is Japan. This is what it's like in this time, in this part of Japan. But I guess you don't really get that with a lot of American authors nowadays. Like, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, there's some. That Colson Whitehead guy, he had a couple books. Like, the one book, I forget the name of it I was going to read. I think it was like a slavery book. And that seemed like that would obviously fit the bill. I'd be interested in checking that out.
Wasn't that 10 Years a Slave? Wasn't that
Solomon Northup
was a book before?
I think that's like a memoir though. That's not. This is just fiction. So that's not fiction. That's like sad, awful, horrible, real life. I had that sitting there. I've been meaning to read it. It's just like I don't want to get that depressed, I watched the movie and it was really good, but at the same time, I'm like, oh Jesus, no wonder why this won every Oscar. You'd be racist if you didn't give that the Oscar, right? Like, come on, you got to give that the Oscar. All right, so you have any parting words for our listener, Spencer? Going back to the top 10 list, did you agree with you think that was a good list?
I mean, for my knowledge of like those kind of authors, I think for the most part I agree, but I also like some of the changes that we made. You know that, but yeah, like it's gonna be hard for me to argue any kind of like that kind of stuff until I continue to branch out, more of my what I'm reading and trying to tackle more of those kind of things.
I'd like to cover like an English authors list sometime, and it wouldn't have to be 20th century because I don't know where a lot of these people fall. Well, obviously like Dickens wouldn't fall, but because Dickens would probably be number one unless you count Shakespeare. I mean, if you're going that far back, Shakespeare takes the cake. But I hate Shakespeare, but he's the best, I guess. Then you got Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Tolkien, like. I just feel like a lot of people like there's a lot of people where I'm like, oh, that's a great author. Then I found out I was like, oh, they're British. Why didn't I know that?
Like Wells.
Yeah, H.G. Wells. I would guessed. Of course, I would have thought Jules Verne was British, but he's French.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a Frenchman. I don't.
You don't say.
It's weird because for a guy who likes like different languages and is so invested in learning about different cultures and reading books from all over the world and stuff, I just never have ever given a shit about France. I don't know why. Maybe just all the jokes we heard growing up about them being jerks. It's weird. Like I never cared about French literature. I never thought going to Paris would be fun.
I didn't even know French had literature.
Yeah, they're fucking great. Like Les Mis and all that stuff.
Oh, that's terrible.
They're fucking snobby. We shouldn't say that because we have French listeners, like 10 of them. But it's just, I have no problem with France. I'm just never interested in French. Like, the food never really appealed to me. Like I said, like the city living of Paris.
A good baguette might be good, you know.
Baguette and I like espresso. I like coffee. I just feel like if I went over there, I think that here's the main issue. If I went over there, they would, because me and you both speak stupid.
Yeah, dumb.
We're not good with English, let alone trying to do French. We would just be made fun of the whole time, I think. Whereas we go to London, I feel like, or just England in general, I feel like most places we go, they might take the piss, but they're going to be on our side kind of. They be fun guys. But I just feel like France is the one country where you go to, they're not going to have fun with you. They're just going to be dicks.
Because even if you, I think like a lot of times when you go to different places, if you're trying, especially when you're doing another language, it's like as if you're trying, they'll try to work with you. But I feel
they
like
appreciate that you try to learn the language. But French are like,
oh, you don't speak it perfectly? Fuck off.
Fucking even if you do, because I've watched this girl's TikToks come up sometimes on the reels, and she lives in France, but I think she's an American, so that's like her whole thing, and she speaks like really good French. So she'll go into like a restaurant, but she'll mess up like just one tiny thing, and then it's like, ooh, like they always have to point it out, and they're just dicks, and I don't want to deal with that. But it's weird because like Italy, I'm down for Spain, England, Ireland, anywhere in Europe, pretty much. Russia, I would even go to. That's another weird one. For being a classic lit guy, I'm not really I don't give much of a shit about French, German, or Russian literature, which I like Kafka, but other than that, I don't really care.
I wasn't sure. When we were talking about authors, I almost brought off Kafka, but I wasn't exactly sure.
His name's Franz, dude. I don't know. How many Americans you know named Franz? Not France, Franz, like Franz Ferdinand. So I just I don't know. I'm not a Eurocentric. I'm not even really a Eurocentric guy. I mean, I like a lot of English writers and their work and stuff, but I'm more interested in like Japanese fiction and Latin American fiction, and I just think they give more variety in like the magical realism stuff more. I'm not really, while I do enjoy some of the bleakness of like Dickens, Great Expectations or the fucking, the Twin City bullshit, whatever. Like I don't like Bleak House. I heard it's bleak. Like I don't want to be bleak. Like Dracula's fun, but at the same time, it's kind of depressing at times.
I definitely do like when it comes to different places reading stuff from like Japan, like just the different kind of stories,
and the storytelling's different.
Yeah. And so that's what I like sometimes about trying to check things out from different places, is seeing like what kind of stories they tell and like how they tell them. Like I said before, that's one of the reasons why I'm liking even though I haven't read them much, but I'm finding myself more interested in mangas other than to American comics, because just the ideas or the weird settings or whatever it is, whatever the hook is, it seems like.
Well, a lot of that comes from their folklore, because they have such a rich and fucking weird folklore, and their history goes back so far, and they were isolated for so long that Japan is everything is you talk about oh, that's Japanese, you could say that about that's Spanish, but that can mean multiple things. But if you say it's Japanese, that's Japanese.
Yes,
there's nothing that's gonna be like that. You can't mistake Japanese for Korean or Chinese. Japanese is very distinct. Just the culture, the way that they come up, and especially when you go pre-Meiji period, it's just very distinct, and samurais and fucking all that shit. So that's very cool. America's weird because it's such a hodgepodge of people that we get all kinds. American Gods was a good example because you get all the folklore.
And two, even now, we've been saying it for a while, but America's still just a baby.
Yeah.
When it comes to country, you know what I mean?
Controversial pick. I would say American Gods qualifies as the great American novel, even though it's written by a British guy.
Yeah.
Because it takes place across the whole United States, and it's about different folklore blending into America. Come on.
You're not going to get an argument out of me.
You need to read that. It's so fucking good. Anyway, before we fucking rattle on more and more about, I could do a whole episode about different cultures, fucking literary fiction and stuff, because I like it, but we don't need to. If you want to check out our work that is not anytime soon going to be the great American anything. I am 55 pages into my novel I'm writing, by the way.
Nice.
Yes, it is. So if you want to check out my novel in the future, keep updated by going to drunkenpenwriting.com and just read our work. We ain't posting shit on there right now. We're busy. Leave us alone. Go to Twitter and follow us at drunkenpenwriting, where we post some saucy literary memes here and there. Facebook and Instagram, same deal. Same dealio. That's at drunkenpenwriting, though, so not the same dealio completely. We do have a YouTube channel. If you're not listening or watching on YouTube, which you can't watch because we don't have video, we could. Just don't want to. It's more work for me. I don't want to do more work. That's my problem. I want to do less work, but get more views and money. Especially the money part that we see.
The money would be nice.
Preferably money without even any views. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Just somebody can hand us money. Any big announcements from you, Spencer? Just that we're going to read Devil in the Blue Dress for February.
And please give us monies.
You can give us monies. Spencer's OnlyFans is actually deactivated this week. Very depressing, I know. The fucking yak yodeler would have been wonderful. But sadly,
it was taken already.
Well, he broke the rule. You broke the rules. Who knew the guidelines were so strict in some certain aspects? If you want to know.
Don't worry about what rule was broken.
It was the yodeling of the yak. That was the problem. Because like I said, yodeling's a verb, but to be able to do it to something doesn't make sense. But he did. And you don't want to know how. But he got banned. Only like 30 days, right? Or a week, or I don't know. You can fight it. Just fight it. So thank you for listening, and we'll check you out next time.